Our final conversation this morning is with the Member of Parliament, Fasiha Hassan, reflecting on her journey from where it all began to national politics and her work in shaping South Africa's democratic institutions. A very good morning to you, Fasiha. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, and good morning to you, Anisa. So happy to be back and to be back in the new studios. This is
Yeah.
very exciting.
Yeah, no stranger to the show, no stranger to South Africa as well. What have you been up to?
Whew. So since getting elected, I'm now in 3 portfolio committees in national parliament. I'm
Damn.
in energy, mineral and petroleum resources, and also in the Judicial Service Commission. People might have also seen that. That's the body that interviews and appoints judges. And then for energy and for minerals, I'm also the what we call the whip. So I know it's always funny when we talk to people, they're like, "You're the what?"
Yeah.
But there's like a parliamentary term. So you've got like a chairperson of a portfolio committee, and then you have the whip, and you sort of deal with a lot of the political management of that committee. So I've been busy with that constituency work, life, and also trying to be healthy, exercise, work-life balance, but not being very good at that.
I see you putting that in inverted commas. What does that mean?
Yeah, like
Exercise?
some days it works, and then
Yeah.
other days I'm just like I have zero work-life balance. So
Yeah.
just like trying to figure that out.
Okay, so I knew you're part of the judicial committee, right?
This Judicial Service Commission,
Judicial service,
the
but I don't
JSC.
know about the other two. How do you balance that? Because I'm sure like the workload is crazy, and now you're saying that you're also a work as well.
Yes, it's a full load. Like I have different portfolio committees or constituency work sort of every single day, and then of course you always have political work which happens on weekends. So people say to me, "Oh, people don't really understand that it's sort of like a Sunday to Sunday kind of job. It's not a weekday 8 to 5 switch off kind of thing. Even today, our viewers won't know this, but we had an all-nighter trying to fix a report because we were presenting something to the ANC national executive. So we're trying to fix it, work on that, all of it part of the election strategy. And it's just one of those things where you're always on, but at the same time it's really meaningful work, so you don't always get your cake and eat it too. Sometimes the work that you want to be involved in, the meaningful stuff, does take almost every moment of your waking life.
Yeah. How does your sleep schedule look like?
Awful. Oh my god, I'm one of those people
Damn.
now who take like magnesium glycinate at
my
night,
God.
like I've got all these supplements trying to manage that.
Yeah.
But look, I think when you're young, now's the time to push as hard as we can. I mean, you're also pushing, we're all just trying to get as much in, and I think that's also part of what it means to like not only be passionate but say, how do we change the space that we're in at the moment?
Yeah. Looking at the current, the ad hoc committee on everything that's currently happening, the Madlanga Commission, and you being part of the Judicial Service Committee, what are your reflections on what's currently happening, and also especially, in the appointment of judges? How important is that?
So I don't exactly sit on the actual Justice Committee
That's the
or ad
justice.
hoc committee, but
Yeah.
I do sit on the JSC, and I'll still give you my views on ad hoc and,
Yes.
and Madlanga, because this is like really topical, and everybody, you go to different social spaces and you see people watching it on their phones, and you see all these TikTok videos about it, and it's exposed, I think, a really something we all knew, that there was major challenges in the criminal justice system, and even though it's been very painful to listen to, I actually think it's been really critical for our democracy. There's no way we're going to move forward as a country until we really fix the rot within these various industries. So we knew about the rot economically. We've been working on that since before state capture. But now that we've seen these challenges that both Malanga and ad hoc are realizing, it shows that the kind of work that needs to happen even in the police service is really, it's great, but it's also necessary. And then to your question about the JSC and judges, it's so important that we appoint judges who aren't, of course you must be ethical and qualified, but also have, I think, an understanding of society. You don't want to put someone on the bench who doesn't understand the lived experience, particularly of someone who lives in a township, or who has to take public transport, or who has to go through the difficulties of what it means to be a poor black person in this country. You want someone who develops the law with the most marginalized in mind, and I think there's been a bit of a gap in that regard.
Yeah. I know you're definitely still pushing, the barriers of youth, the barriers of everything. How is that going in Parliament? Have you found your way, or is it still that thing of pushing the doors and, telling them that you're here on merit and everything? How's that
Look,
going?
I think it's the latter. It's still
Okay.
an uphill battle. I was very lucky to be able to debate the State of the Nation address a few weeks ago, and I dedicated the last part of that speech, which I think some people might have seen, to actually addressing the president directly and
Yeah.
saying, President Ramaphosa, young people in this country are languishing. And one of the things that I said is that we're not asking for charity as young
Mm.
people. We're demanding justice. We want an opportunity to be economic players in our own country, in our own futures. And we're not asking for handouts. It's the very opposite. We're asking
Yeah.
just for an opportunity that's meaningful where we can change our lives. And that's really, I would say, of everything I've spoken to you about, my biggest focus and what keeps me up at night, what pushes every sort of button is youth unemployment,
Yeah.
and the challenges that young people are facing. And I mean, we know this. You and I are young. We have, if people who are watching, you have young people in your family, in your like circles. It almost feels like it doesn't matter what you study, or even if you
True.
did study, because so many graduates aren't able to find jobs. People
That's
who
true.
don't have qualifications can't find jobs. So who can,
That's true.
right? And that's the point. And it's not just about a job. And he said, it's like creating dignity. It's about a person being able to wake up and say, I know how I'm going to put food on the table. I know how I'm going to look after myself. And even on a like a superficial level, how I'm going to present myself in the world,
Yeah.
And it's just so much more than just jobs and money. It's about, like I said, dignity.
Dignity. No, that's true. The ANC Youth League recently went into elections, of where you were re-elected as well. Congratulations on that. Do you see the youth within the ANC? Do you think there's space for the youth? Do you think the elders are listening to the youth? There's always going to be that
Friction.
struggle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think that they are actually starting to listen now? Do you think it's still a long battle ahead?
I think they don't have a choice anymore.
Okay.
The electoral results are very, very clear. They're very loud.
Yeah.
And in the reality of it, I think they do see, that's the serious, senior leadership, the old guard, see that if they don't evolve, this will be the death of the ANC. And so in many ways, like I said, they don't actually have a choice. The question now is, what kind of meaningful role do we play? Because we don't want to be placeholders. We don't want to be tokens. We don't want to be like sprinklings of young people. Exactly. We don't want handouts.
Yeah.
We want like a meaningful seat at the table where we can say, actually, President, Deputy President, National Chair Gwede Mantashe, all of these people, this is what we need to do for young people to put us on the agenda.
Yeah.
And I mentioned youth unemployment, but it's so much more than that as well. It's just about us as young people determining the future of the country and also determining the future of our lives. Like with the older guard, and I say this with extreme respect, they don't have as much time as we do to live in this country. Right? We are staring down a future of, look at the global conflicts we're witnessing right now, the climate crisis. We're seeing major changes in the world. And are we ready as South Africa? Are we preparing? And more importantly, what does that future look like? And again, it's us as young people who will bear the brunt of whatever decisions are made now, which is why we must be key to the decision-making process.
Yeah. Just on that, and I just want us to talk about the future of South Africa. You're here in Joburg. I mean, I'm sure you're hardly ever here because you're across the country.
I'm up and down, yeah.
But you've spent your life in Joburg. I spent the better part of my youth in Joburg. And what we're seeing in Joburg right now, and also speaking versus the ageism thing that we're talking about, we have a mayoral candidate such as Helen Zille contesting. I mean, Joburg needs someone that's vibrant, someone that's young, someone that's energetic. And I'm not disregarding her political credentials or whatever, but we're seeing people like Helen Zille who are supposed to be in retirement, right?
Yeah.
We had Herman Mashaba earlier on the show as well. He was speaking about his rerun and stuff, but we're not seeing young people come to the fore. What are your views on that? And I don't want to get you mixed into the politics of, but just on the issue of older people contesting spaces. I mean, we have Zoran Mamdani in New York City, who's literally our age, our generation, and he's the mayor of New York, but
and like commands a budget that's so much bigger than all of the other cities we've spoken about.
Exactly, and he knows what he's doing. So for those of the people who said no, young people don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
But we have Johannesburg, Africa's economic hub, and we have
look, I agree with you. I actually think it's not the right way to go. I get that people want maybe like a veteran, sure, but I don't think I agree with that. I actually agree with you. I think you need someone young, vibrant, innovative, someone with
Yes.
the energy who's going to go to the ground, but also do things differently. And Nisa, I
Yes.
think even for
That's
us in the ANC,
important.
we're pushing so hard to say, obviously, what you've done up to now is not working.
Yes.
And this goes, by the way, not only for the ANC, for
Yeah.
all political parties,
Yeah.
because it's the same playbook, right, that they're implementing. And that's why a campaign like Zohran Mamdani's was so exciting,
Yeah.
because it broke with the blueprint of how the Democratic Party used to do things.
Yeah.
And not only did he appeal to a Democratic base in New York, he grew. And that's exactly the point. If you
Yeah.
put a young person who's dynamic and vibrant forward, they think differently about issues, right? Issues that have been plaguing us. Let's think about the housing crisis,
Mm.
about illegal, I'm doing this in inverted commas, illegal land invasion, all of these things that are really difficult in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
We need to think very differently about it. And just maybe for the record, the ANC regional chairperson, Loyiso Masuku, is actually a woman, a young black woman. She's one of the youngest candidates, so it's really something that we need to think about, because we also want it to be representative of us,
That's true.
right? And what we want the future of Joburg to look like. And I'll end it with this. Joburg's an incredible city.
Mm.
I think we're going through a challenging time in our history. But for me, Joburg years are still, the best years are still to come.
Yeah.
And it's really just about aligning everything. So for me, even though I'm up and down all over the country, Joburg for me is the most incredible city in the country.
Yeah. And just as you touch on Loyiso Masuku, the first of so many, first deputy mayor of the city of Johannesburg. But ooh, I'm just looking at the future of South Africa. How does that look like for you? And also as someone who has contributed so much to the country, and also the generations that came after us, do you think that they appreciate the work?
We're not that old.
Okay,
We're
fine.
still young.
Cool.
We're still under 35.
Okay, the younger ones.
Yeah.
Do you think that they appreciate the foundation that was laid for them? Considering the amount of work that you're still putting into things, and other young people are still putting into the future of the country.
Let me answer you from a higher education perspective. And for those who don't know, Anissa was also in the SRC at the same time, so also leadership here with me. I think there's a strong foundation that we put across, but there's been an erosion of it. And we must also blame the system and the structures that be. So, and that's why I wanted to answer this in a higher education lens. Like, universities have made it their job to depoliticize student politics. And it's like strange. You can't depoliticize a political system. And also this notion that it's better, it's not. Part of the reason why we're seeing the crises in the world is precisely because people can say, or think they can say, hey, I'm just not into politics. I'm just going to completely check out. And it allows tyrants like Trump, like Netanyahu, like Modi, etc., to get away literally with murder, because so many people are not actively fighting against them. And I'm not saying go and pick up arms. I'm saying there's so many political ways to voice your opinion, whether it's being on the streets in protest, whether it's writing out against them, speaking out against them. And we're just seeing a world in which the negatives of what we always knew, this depoliticization, is sort of trying to come out. So yes, there's a foundation that we've laid, but I am worried. And I'm also worried because it seems like the world, or let me say leftist politics in the world, is not developing as fast as like right-wing conservatism. So you see these right-wingers, Trump and Netanyahu and others, like super organized, super well-funded. And then we are here like thinking that it's just, we need to be so much better organized and so much better coordinated to take on these guys, because there's a chance in these, and this is what scares me, that we might have kids or future generations might come in and they may be born into a world in which they have less rights than when we were born into the world. And that's an incredibly scary thing, that they will be born into more instability than we were.
Yeah, no, someone was saying when it's our time to be adults.
Oh, like COVID, climate, World War III, genocide.
What haven't we gone through?
Yeah, all of.
Coalition government.
Coalition government should be actually ranked up there because it's just a mess.
Can we talk about that actually, coalition governments? And I don't know, Joburg politics is one of the blueprints for coalition governments. And that is quite hectic. I mean, for a long time, we saw it coming until we were actually in the eye of the storm.
Sure.
And what seemed like it started off from a municipal level has now found itself up top at national.
Mm.
How do you think the trajectory of the next elections looks like? Unfortunately, we're already in the thick of things for coalitions. How do you think that looks like? And especially for a party such as the ANC being the largest liberation movement on the continent, how do you think that looks?
Look, the first thing is that the way the constitution was drafted
Yeah.
actually gives a lot of space and power to smaller political parties and groups. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you look at how we calculate PR seats, etc., it favors smaller parties, not bigger parties, right? So in many ways, this was always going to happen, right? As a democracy matures, people feel like there shouldn't be one party dominance, etc., etc. So for me, everyone's like, oh my God, no, I mean, this is like sort of an inevitability of how we crafted a system. That being said, the challenge with the current form of coalition governments is that they're unstable and they're based on horse trading, sometimes literally, right? Where it's you give me this, I'll give you that. It's not based on policy or on building a city or a space that is strong enough. Now, that doesn't mean that always has to be the case. And I think the interesting thing now with the government of national unity on a national level, it's forcing all of us to learn a different skill set. And this is what I say to young people all the time. This thing of coalitions requires a very particular agility, adaptability, etc. We as young people have that. We have the ability to learn the skill set early on in our careers, whether it's political, whether it's private sector, etc. And this gives us almost like a competitive edge as young people. If we learn how to coalesce across different divides, we're going to be able to not only bring about stable coalitions, we're actually going to outpace the elders. Because they have baggage that comes with them, and it's completely understandable, right? They fought during apartheid. They have all of these traumas. We have our own traumas, sure, but they have a very particular kind of trauma. Now, you and I can sit across the table from someone we disagree with in the PA, for example, or whichever political party, and find some sort of common ground, not because we agree with them, but because the people of South Africa deserve a stable government. And that's why I keep saying that if we learn the skill set that's needed now, this could be another opportunity for us as young people to take up space and to take up leadership roles that traditionally would have been closed out to us.
No, that's true. The part of the agility, and like you're saying, sitting across the table and not holding a certain animosity, or you just remember something that happened back then. So it's the clarity and the state of mind. What's next for you, Fasiha? Shucks, you've been so busy. Changing the world, changing South Africa. And it's not just limited to South Africa, because I see here and then you're out of the country. How has that been like?
Yeah, so I was recently at the Munich Security Conference, which, if you don't know, is sort of like for lack of a better description, like a Coachella, but for diplomats and security officials in government. That was just the first thing that came to mind. So it happens in Munich, and it's a fascinating space. It isn't necessarily all of our political values. I don't always agree with the people who were in the room. But for example, J.D. Vance had come there in the previous time. I actually met AOC in the US, so she was also there. There were like very interesting voices from across the world, some of whom are aligned to NATO, some of whom are not. But that's why I thought it's important to say it's not necessarily our political system that we support, but it was fascinating and important to see, because South Africa, and again, we're punching above our weight. We're starting to get invited again into spaces that we were historically excluded from. So being at the Munich Security Conference is actually quite an important thing for global politics. And it's interesting, in 2007 or 8, Putin actually went to the MSC and he detailed a very particular speech. And that speech has come to be the blueprint of what he's done, actually. So people cite that as well. So it's just a fascinating space. But in terms of what's next, maybe I'll just answer in the short term. For our listeners at home, they might have seen the Ekapa mine tragedy. There was a mudslide.
Yes.
The 5 miners have still not been recovered. And so I'm on my way to Kimberley from here. We'll be meeting with the families and the community there. They have asked that we come. So it is a private company. It's not actually a government owned mine or anything like that. But the reality is it's a very tragic situation. And that's the thing about being an MP. You can have this idea of what your week or day will look like, and then a tragedy will happen and you must now go there and you must be there for people. And that's, I think, the side of the job that people don't see. And that's actually, for me, the more important side, being with our people and being on the ground.
Yeah. And that's something that I also appreciate about you, the fact that it's beyond the political
Mm.
lines. It's all about the patriotism and how do we forge a way forward for South Africa. What message, as a parting shot, do you have?
Hmm.
I know you said we're not that old, because I was just about to say for the younger people,
Well, I
the
mean, they
younger
are younger
generation.
people than
Yes.
us,
So those that are
but
in like varsity at the
yeah.
moment, what message do you have for them holistically, not limited to
Mm.
just politics?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think our issues often feel insurmountable in the country.
Mm.
It feels like we're never going to solve okay, we solved it. This is the point. We thought we'd never solve the energy problem, right? Now we're starting to solve it. There's no load shedding, but there is load reduction. Still
Yeah.
progress. It feels like we're not going to solve the water crisis. It feels like this election, etc., etc. It feels like youth unemployment, we're not making a dent. But the reality is, these issues are not insurmountable.
Mm.
It's about us as young people, and you'll know this so well, Anissa. There was a time in which we were told during FISMA's fall that we'd never amount to anything, that it would mean nothing, and that it would just sort of fizzle into the background of life.
Yeah.
And had we believed those people who said to us, we as young people didn't have a voice or our voice didn't matter,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have done in 10 days what others couldn't do in the last 20, 25 years before that. And this is the power of young people. When we organize, when we mobilize, when we work with each other across political lines, we can actually bring about fundamental change.
Yeah.
And that's my parting shot. So for me, it's about aligning everything correctly. For me, it's about ensuring that our best years are yet to come. And I'll end with this. The world may be changing and it may feel like the world is crumbling around us. But we as South Africa have taken a moral high ground. We've taken a step at the ICJ. We've actually said to the imperial and sort of colonial powers, we're not going to be bullied.
Yeah.
And that's such an
Literally.
important thing for our future, right? And for who we are as young people now. And if we take nothing from that, let's at least take some courage from the fact that we are in the new world that's now forming. I think we're going to be a much bigger player.
Mm, interesting. No, thank you for that. Always interesting to speak to you. That was Fasiha Hassan, a member of parliament, but most importantly, a comrade and a sister, speaking to us about the future of South Africa. We will be going into an ad break. See you after this.